What club started in a rugby city but roared like a tiger to the top of English football? Hi, I'm Leah, totally excited to dive into today's topic.
And I'm Garrett, absolutely thrilled about what we've got ahead.
Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
All right, let's set the stage for this one. We're talking Hull City A.F.C. history and milestones. Here's a cool thought to kick off. I remember watching a Hull City match at a friend's place years back. I didn't even know much about them at the time, but those black and amber stripes just popped off the screen. The whole Tiger vibe was like striking and kind of fearless. And the fans, they were loud in this passionate, full-hearted way that stuck with me. I walked away thinking, who are these Tigers and what's their story? That curiosity, not gonna lie, sent me down a rabbit hole that led straight to this episode.
Let's open the book on this. Hull City Association Football Club is from Kingston upon Hull in East Yorkshire, and they're nicknamed the Tigers because of those black and amber stripes. They play at the MKM Stadium, which they moved into in 2002 after a long spell at their old ground, Boothferry Park. For quick context, promotion and relegation in England means teams move up or down the league tiers based on how they finish each season. So, Hull has been on that elevator a lot.
And the origin story is pretty wild. Hull City formed in 1904, but Hull was a rugby town first. Two rugby league clubs, Hull F.C. and Hull Kingston Rovers, already owned the local sporting scene. That meant football, the association kind, had to squeeze in where it could. Early on, Hull City literally borrowed rugby venues for matches. Their first ever game, a friendly in 1904, was at the Boulevard, which was Hull F.C.'s ground. So, football grew there by piggybacking on rugby spaces and routines.
Why did rugby have that hold in Hull? What made it so hard for a football club to get going there?
Great question. It was tradition, infrastructure, and crowds already committed to rugby league. Stadium access and matchday income were tied up. Without league status at first, Hull City had to rely on friendlies and early FA Cup ties just to bring in gate money. But momentum built, and in 1905 they were admitted to the Football League's second division. Fun detail. Hull and nearby Grimsby were even exempted from playing on Christmas Day because the regional fish trade was in overdrive then. The league literally shaped fixtures around local industry. That's pretty cool, right?
That's fascinating, and they set up a proper home soon after. In 1906, Hull opened Anlaby Road as their ground. It gave them control over crowds and atmosphere, which matters a ton for finances. There's also this heartbreaker moment in 1909 to 1910. They missed promotion to the top flight by a tiebreaker called goal average. That's an old system where you divide goals scored by goals conceded, instead of today's goal difference, which is just subtracting. They finished level on points with Oldham Athletic, but lost out by a sliver, 0.29 on goal average. What a knife edge.
And the early decades were a mix of promise and struggle. After World War I, they had a slump, but a bright spot came in 1930 with an FA Cup semi-final run, including a replay against Arsenal. That's a national knockout competition open to teams across levels, so a deep run is a big statement. Then they bounced back to win the 3rd Division North title in 1932 to 1933, powered by Bill McNaughton, who was the league's top scorer with 41. Those early successes helped set identity, even while the club saw its share of ups and downs.
Fast forwarding a bit, the mid-20th century had stars who still echo for fans. Andy Davidson, a rugged fullback who played from the 1950s into the 1970s, holds the club record with 579 first-team appearances, and Chris Chilton, a prolific striker, scored a club record 222 goals. Both were part of a great 1965 to 1966 side under manager Cliff Britton that won the 3rd Division title. Those names are like family stories if you grew up supporting Hull.
All right, let's roll on into the modern roller coaster. The early 1980s were rough. Financial collapse pushed the club toward receivership, which is basically insolvency, where a receiver manages assets to pay debts. Then a rescue arc followed. Don Robinson took control in 1982 to 1983, brought in manager Colin Appleton, And Hull won promotion with talents like Brian Marwood, who later played in the top tier, and a future coach you might recognize, Steve McLaren. They went up again in 1984 to 1985 under Brian Horton, who had started as a player manager, and that momentum brought big crowds back.
There were also meaningful firsts. In 1986, Ray Daniel became Hull's first black player, debuting against West Bromwich Albion. He went on to make dozens of league appearances before moving on. Those milestones matter because they show who gets represented on the pitch. The 1990s then turned turbulent. Relegation in 1991, more financial strain, and in 1997, David Lloyd, the former tennis figure and entrepreneur, took over the club and also owned Hull FC, the rugby side. That sparked controversial ideas like combining operations and moving grounds, and fans pushed back hard.
Yeah, and that pushback was loud and creative. In 1998, away at Bolton, Hull supporters threw tennis balls on the pitch to protest a proposed ground move and merger concepts. It's often cited as football's first tennis ball protest. That kind of supporter activism became part of Hull's identity. A new consortium arrived, Mark Haitley left as manager, and Warren Joyce, then just 34, took over a bottom-place side. Cue the Great Escape of 1998 to 1999. They survived in the Football League by 5 points, saving the club from dropping out of the professional tiers, a massive moment.
The 2000s bring the turning point. After stadium lease drama where the club even got locked out briefly during a dispute, Adam Pearson, a former Leeds United director, took ownership in 2001. He stabilized finances and rebuilt the squad. Then came two key arrivals in 2002, Ian Ashby, a midfield leader who became a long-serving captain, and Stuart Elliott, a goal-scoring wide player. They moved into a new home that December, then called the KC Stadium, now MKM Stadium. New venue, bigger crowds, better commercial footing. Stadium upgrades can totally shift a club's horizon.
Let's keep it moving. Peter Taylor took over as manager and engineered back-to-back promotions in 2003 to 2005. That lifted Hull from the 4th tier to the 2nd tier. Then, after some turbulence, Phil Brown, a pragmatic coach with a motivational edge, guided them to a club first. In 2008, Hull won the championship playoff final 1-0 at Wembley. Dean Windass, a Hull-born striker and local hero, smashed a volley that is still replayed on loop. Playoffs, by the way, are mini knockouts among high finishers for one last promotion spot. That day sent Hull to the Premier League for the first time.
And their Premier League debut started with a roar, an opening win against Fulham, then shock-away wins at Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur. For a while that autumn, they were sitting joint second. Survival came down to the wire, but they stayed up that first season. After that, financial pressures and results started chipping away, and relegation in 2010 reset things. New ownership came in with Asim Alam that same year, promising to steady the debts.
Then came Steve Bruce in 2012, a manager with big league experience. He brought in players he trusted, like Ahmed El Mohammadi, a dependable right-sided player, Robbie Brady, a creative wide man, and David Myler, an engine in midfield. In 2013, Hull sealed automatic promotion in dramatic fashion. Their draw with Cardiff, plus a last-minute Leeds United winner at Watford, swung it. The next season, they finished 16th in the Premier League and made the FA Cup final. They even led Arsenal 2-0 early at Wembley before losing 3-2 after extra time. Still, that earned them a European debut where they advanced past AS Trenton but fell to Lokeren on away goals. Away goals is a tiebreak where goals scored on the opponent's ground count more if the total is tied.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In 2014, Hull signed two young defenders, Harry Maguire, who later captained at the highest level, and Andrew Robertson, who went on to become one of the world's top left backs. That showed smart recruitment, but the margins stayed tight. Relegation in 2015, then promotion straight back in 2016, with a playoff final won by Mohamed Diam, a midfield powerhouse, scoring a stunner. Yet manager Steve Bruce resigned shortly after amid reported tensions over recruitment, and the instability kept biting. Mike Phelan, then Marco Silva, then more change, and by 2017, they were down again.
And that yo-yo label stuck because of how finances, ownership choices, and managerial turnover mapped straight onto results. Grant McCann took charge in 2019, set an attacking style, and had Hull 8th in January 2020. Then the club sold two key attackers, Jared Bowen and Kamil Grosicki. After that, form collapsed. Add the COVID-19 disruption, and Hull tumbled to League One in July 2020. The response was strong, though. McCann's squad regrouped, earned promotion in April 2021, and won the League One title in May 2021. That was their first league crown since 1966. Big swing back up.
Modern ownership turns the page again. In January 2022, Akın İlıçlı, a Turkish media entrepreneur, completed a takeover. He wanted attacking football and entertainment. There were managerial changes. Şota Arveladze arrived, then Liam Rosenior took over in late 2022. Rosenior, a former Hull player, improved the defense and the away form, finishing 15th in 2023 and then coming just short of the playoffs in 2024. But he was dismissed over a difference in football philosophy. That's the vision for how a team plays and recruits, like how fast and aggressive you want to be. It shows how style and results can clash.
Yeah, and the churn continued. Tim Walter, a coach known for high-pressing, possession-heavy ideas, came in mid-2024, but results cratered. Ruben Selles took over that December, tightened things up, and avoided relegation in 2025, only to depart days later. Then Sergej Zakirovic, a Bosnian coach promising intensity and verticality, arrived in June 2025. His side found a better blend. The 2025 to 2026 season had drama. They slipped out of the playoffs late, then jumped back in on the final day. In the semi, they beat Millwall after a 0-0 at home and a composed 2-0 away win.
And then the curveball. The other semi-final saw Southampton beat Middlesbrough, but a Spygate-style scandal got Southampton disqualified. That's a governance issue where rules around competitive integrity were judged to be broken. Details and interpretations can be contested, and these cases often spark debate. Middlesbrough were reinstated for the final. Hull met them at Wembley, and Ollie McBurney, a striker with a knack for late drama, scored a 95th-minute winner. Promotion sealed. That's one for the memory bank.
Speaking of firsts and folklore, let's dig into a disputed nugget. In 1970, Hull were reportedly the first club eliminated from a cup by a penalty shootout, in the Watney Cup against Manchester United. The Watney Cup was an experimental tournament in England that helped normalize penalty shootouts. A shootout, quick definition, is a tiebreak after extra time where teams take spot kicks in turns. Many English sources cite that Hull exit as a first in senior English competition, which is a cool place in football's rule change history.
Real talk. I love that story, but here's another angle. Globally, there may have been lesser documented shootouts or experiments before 1970. Records can be fuzzy, especially for friendlies or small tournaments. So while Hull's Watney Cup moment is the earliest well-documented one in senior English football, calling it the worldwide first can be tricky. For me, the value is that it marks the sport trying a new way to settle ties, and Hull's name is stitched right into that moment of change.
Yeah, that checks out. Even if the global first claim is contestable, the documented English first vibe still gives it weight. These inflection points stick in club memory. They shape how supporters talk about their team's place in the bigger football story. It's not just wins and losses, it's being present at the birth of something the whole game now uses.
Okay, let's move on to the tiger in the room. Hull's identity is rooted in those black and amber stripes, the tiger's nickname, the roar you hear on match days. That branding filters into everything: community outreach, kids programs, mascots, and marketing. It's a simple, bold image that carries history from the striped shirts of older eras to now. I can totally see a future documentary that opens on Dean Windas's 2008 volley, then cuts to the 2014 FA Cup final where Hull burst to a 2-0 lead. Add the 2026 last gasp winner, and you've got a spine-tingling arc. Before we close, let's unpack a what-if. In 2013, on the final day, Nick Proschwitz, a forward for Hull, had a late penalty. If he'd scored and Hull had finished their game 3-1, their promotion would not have hinged on Leeds United's late winner at Watford. So, what changes if he converts? I think the narrative tightens in their favor. You probably get a calmer summer window. Recruitment might skew even more toward consolidating Premier League status because there's less of that emotional whiplash. Maybe the budgeting gets a fraction easier when you're not riding the adrenaline of someone else's last-minute result.
I'm down for that, and I'll add the psychology piece. Scoring that penalty could have given the squad and fan base a sharper sense of control. Instead of celebrating with one eye on another stadium, you close your own deal. That can bleed into early season confidence in the Premier League. Margins at that level are razor thin. A few more brave passes, a calmer first touch against a big club, maybe even one extra win in those opening months. It's all tiny nudges, but tiny nudges can write big outcomes.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep learning and exploring.
Stay curious, folks, and join us next time for more laid-back learning.